All right, so syllabus. We want to go through the course description. That way, we are all um, aligned with this. And this is the boring part of the class. You kind of have to do it. I don't know if any better way to do it. Usually, I post a video, but this would be the video for today. Course description: study of major issues at the intersection of theology, ecclesiology, missiology, and culture. Okay, so when I throw out those words, we're going to be interacting with that throughout the whole semester. So we'll define those as we go a little bit better. Most of those you probably have an idea of. You understand theology, you understand ecclesiology, doctrine of the church. Missiology is basically the doctrine of mission. It's a little more practical in nature, though some are arguing, and I would argue as well, that it should be put into the whole, Dr. Bowman's, the eightfold gamut of theology, pneumatology, angelology, soteriology, all these ologies. I would contend that missiology is the one that's missing, and it's starting to get put back into it. Well, it's starting to get put into it now with new writings and understandings of the Missio Dei and how that relates to our ecclesiology. So, and we talk a lot about Christology a lot too. Ecclesiology, missiology, and culture, which culture we're going to define. I think that's next week, maybe, something like that. We're actually going to work through some definition of culture and try to understand that bowl of soup in a North American context. So when we discuss, we may talk about some things that are happening in other nations, but we're primarily focusing on the United States and Canada. We really don't discuss Mexico, even though in a geography sense, you could think of Mexico as North America, but with it being a completely different language, it's usually fitted more in international studies. So that's the only reason we really don't. But we will discuss Hispanic mission here in the States. So we do actually interact with international because we have so many cities that are becoming very diverse internationally, and so we will touch on that. But just to understand, it's North American context, and so broadly speaking, we're looking at English speakers who are here, but we're also going to talk about immigration and that sort of thing. So the whole refugee thing brings up a North American missiological issue now. How are we going to engage refugees with the gospel when they're coming? How are we going to plant churches among a Syrian refugee population? That's a North American missiology issue, even though we're going to have someone who is trained cross-culturally to do that kind of a work. So students will learn to develop a missional philosophy. So this is the thinking class. All right, we're going to turn your brains on. You're going to do a lot of reading and writing. You're welcome. But we're going to do it together. Of making disciples and planting churches through wisely engaging diverse contexts with the gospel. That diverse context reflects North America very well. Emphasis will be placed on studying worldviews in a pluralistic culture, relating theology and culture to missionary practice, analyzing appropriate contextualization models, and making disciples in a post-Christian context. Are there any questions about course description?
So what are we doing here?
Yeah, good job. Good question. Course delivery and methods. This is normal. We'll get to the end of the class and say, so what's church planning? And this is his third class. Define that for me? I've never heard of this such concept.
You want me to do what again?
Nothing. Just sit back and do nothing.
Spread what? Share who?
Joyce Meyer's view of the gospel. We went over this in the first class. All right, so like the course delivery, notice it says integrated class, so some will be working online. Charlie, glad to have you live video. Adds nice little dynamic to have that. And so we will have the collaborate session. Will be open every Tuesday and Thursday at this time. Like it says here in that part, since the weekly lectures will primarily be recorded during Tuesday's class period on campus, and live video students should keep in mind that Tuesdays are for learning and Thursdays are for doing. So just kind of remember that. We're going to learn, then we're going to do. Learn, do, learn, do. So if we have a guest speaker, which I've got one, I will be in Canada the very first Tuesday of February. We're going back to Calgary for another visit, and so it's only like 2 weeks away. But there'll be a guest speaker coming in that day, and then I'll be back for the Thursday class where we'll do stuff. Notice that a week goes from a Monday to a Monday. So it kind of starts Monday, 8 a.m. ish, and then ends the following Monday, 11 p.m. So the week is like a week and a half a day. So it kind of overlaps a little bit. So just know that when you have things that are due, they're going to be due Monday at 11:59 for that week before. So you get the whole weekend up until Monday to get everything turned in. It used to be Sunday. It used to be Sunday night, which was tough when you're at church and doing things. So they changed that to Monday a couple years ago. So since all of you guys are here, lectures should not be an issue. Lectures should pretty much be handled in the class period, so they will always be posted online in case you need those. All right, so program objectives as far as the North American Church Planting minor, which are you three guys in the minor itself? So you'll be taking all classes. Yeah, I know you are. You are, and Charlie, I know you switched. So I think Jeremy and Derek. So all five of you who are in the class this semester are all in the minor itself. Last semester we had like 5 who were just taking 4 electives. And so that we may have some new ones come in from time to time for that. But this class specifically addresses the third goal for the whole program, which is to learn how to exegete North American culture. So you're familiar with exegesis in Hollinger's class. I'm going to hit exegesis from a different side, and so we're going to actually exegete society, culture, and worldview alongside the text. I think next week you're going to read one of my papers that I just wrote on that very topic. For my PhD classes, which is why we must do both, why we must exegete scripture and exegete culture. So you're going to have to get a little nerdy and read something that I wrote. Probably contextualize the gospel, mess with a post-Christian society, because that's where we're heading. All right, any questions thus far? No, perfect. Course materials. First book is Coy, Facing the Change. When we get down to the course schedule, you'll notice that we kind of mix up the reading a little bit, and so you'll kind of it's based on that topic that week is how the reading kind of fits, and so that's how it's outlined. So just know that I do need to have each of these copies. I know that this was on Kindle. I'm not sure about this one, but because it's a newer publisher.
I got the Crossroads one already.
Okay, perfect.
I got $2.
Nice. And if you do do happen to need them, I got them in my office, so you can always stop by and borrow them for a day if you gotta get caught up in reading the day before or something like that. Course requirements assignment. So let's go through the course requirements real fast. Content quizzes. So when I say content, I'm meaning lectures and textbook reading. So that's content. Okay. So a content quiz. You will read selected chapters from these 2 books or articles uploaded in Blackboard. So like I posted the one from Stetzer on basic what is contextualization. His blog, he does a lot with contextualization often. I've got several good ones that we're going to kind of work through later on that he's touched on. He has like a 5-part series on contextualization he did a while back that's really, really good. So we're going to kind of walk through that a little bit to really understand that concept. But so if I do post an article in Blackboard, there could be a quiz question from it. Just know that. So quiz question comes from content, which includes all those. You'll also be required to sit in or watch the lectures. That's pretty standard. Most will be taught from me. We may have some guests. And then the quiz, like I said, will be due the Monday. So what we discussed today in the reading for this week, which this week will be a little bit light. Your quiz will always do, the very first quiz semester is always easier. You kind of get used to everything. Though, Matt, you should be like writing my quizzes for me by now. You've taken so many.
What is the point of this class? True or false?
That's why he's not writing the quiz questions for this year. All right, scripture reading. So I try to make it to where you have a lot of the stuff that's required you will be working on in class. Your textbook reading will be one of the big things you will do outside of class. Scripture reading, journaling, we'll do that together each class period. So those of you who are online, you guys are very familiar already because you've done it before. So, and it is a live Google Doc, and so I have some instructions on there. You all be shared onto it, so you just don't go and edit or delete anyone else's, because if you delete it, it deletes everybody's. So that's a shared Google Doc, and you are required to do at least a post for every chapter. There's 16 chapters in 1 Corinthians, so 16 chapters plus 16 comments. So on each chapter, you should comment on other students. There's a little comment feature on the side. You do that, you get 100. I mean, it's a very, very easy 10% of your grade. Let's see, discussion board. We will, because this class is getting you to think, there will be a lot more discussion boards. So you will have a weekly discussion board that you will be, there will be a question posted, and usually Thursdays you guys will have time in class to do that, because we'll kind of discuss it, flesh it out, answer questions, and you'll have time to work through it together and do that. So those of you who are doing the class period should be able to do that, and then those will always be due that Monday just as well as the other thing. So that will be in class. And then contextualization research project. Whew, man, this is the big one, guys. This is a beast. It's worth like 40% of your grade. Yep, 40% of your grade is just this one assignment.
You will not break me.
You should fear.
I've been broken. Last semester broke me. Now I am just nothing but pieces on the ground. But I am stronger than ever.
This semester will heal you. No, this is the class where you're going to really show me how you're thinking and tracking.
That'd be a loaded question.
Yes. So, anyways, the research project, there's different parts to it. So you're going to use the missional helix that's going to be taught in class next week to research, write, and present on a topic related to gospel mission North American culture. The professor will guide students' research, so I'll be here a long time. We'll use the group platform in Blackboard. You'll interact with each other. I'll be interacting. So you're going to be working on this project, but I'm giving you key steps along the way so that it's not, you won't be you won't be able to wait until that last weekend when it's due. And Saturday morning, get your books for it and write it Sunday and turn it in Monday. Like, you won't be able to do that. It's going to be, we're going to start introducing you to things through the blog. I think the blogs are every other week. I think, bi-weekly. So every other week you'll have a assigned blog post to do, and we'll do those on Thursdays as well. That will be part of that we'll do. There may be, so for this project, there may be things for that you have to do outside, outside the reading and stuff. But you're basically you're gonna do some guided research through the blog post. You're gonna type up a final paper, 10-page. But you guys are lucky. My minimum's like 30 pages that I gotta do. I'm getting ready to type out a 50-pager. It's fun. So you have a final paper, 10 pages, blog post, and you'll do a presentation on it in class. Okay, and so all that adds up to the full grade. So there's good pieces. We'll work a lot of that in class, and there will be one exam. There will be a midterm exam that's going to cover some of the intro content, because that content really is specific and good to be examined. What's examined, not examinated. Good call.
Definitely.
You pay attention in English comp too, didn't you?
I'm a writer, so yes.
That's right. should know that by now. So
Professors.
you'll be examined on the first 6 weeks worth of stuff, because that first 6 weeks, as we'll go through, is just kind of really good foundational things. But your final exam is basically your oral presentation. So you're going to treat it like an oral exam. I'm going to grade you on your presentation, and that's going to be your final exam. So you only have one written exam. Any questions thus far? That's not that's not daunting, is it? I mean, that's doable, right? Yeah, we got it. All right, so let's scroll down now to plagiarism. Just don't do it.
You won't be our friend anymore.
Yeah, I'll block you on Facebook if you plagiarize.
Actually, I think I'm okay with that consequence.
Okay.
I don't care about it.
All right. So let's look at the course schedule, which we look at our content for each week. So you'll see, so what you see here in the syllabus is what I copy and paste into the Blackboard thing. All right, so if you want to know, hey, what do I need to do for next week? Look at the syllabus, it'll tell you. So some of that, I'm still building Blackboard in that, so it's not quite ready yet. But if you have any question, you can see exactly what we're going to be talking about here, and the assignments are all listed out. They just don't have everything in Blackboard yet, so it's coming. I'll be building that as we go, because this is a brand new class. You guys are guinea pigs on this.
I've been your guinea pig for the last year and a half.
You have for each new class. Each class has been different, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm learning as a professor.
Equally as enjoyable.
He's only saying that so I don't fail him.
Oh,
Got a question. Yes, Derek, look at you.
oh, look who decided to show up to class. I don't even want to hear about it anymore.
Yes, Derek. I didn't know you. Derek, when'd you get here?
Oh, dang, I wish I had Rick Astley still pulled up.
Hey, I just wanted to stop in and say hey. Oh, cool. Hey, Derek. Are you at work right now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Hear you better if you were sitting.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to stop and say hey.
Cool. Are you?
There.
Well,
I love you.
Matt had to do the intro singing all by himself. It was
did.
it was interesting. But we say never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down.
Please never do that again.
Okay,
That was pretty funny though.
Derek, things going well for you, bud?
Yes.
Someone said no.
Who said no in the background?
The boss lady. The
The-
boss lady.
The boss lady. Well, she is a tough one to put up with you, my man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, she deserves an honorary vacation away from you.
I won't say.
No, okay. Well, cool. Are you gonna hang out for a little while? Or you just pop in and
Well,
say hi.
Yeah, I'll probably keep the volume low and just listen to you.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going through the syllabus. So you probably
You hear me?
yeah, we hear you good. And yes, Charlie, you're correct. You should get honorary
Okay.
doctorates for being my guinea pigs. So I will get my Sharpie and give all of you your certificate.
Yeah, please write that on my diploma.
yeah,
Julian.
Well, what we do when you guys graduate, and you get your diploma, I'll come up with my Sharpie and I'll write on there honorary doctorate plus your bachelor's and all that, granted by someone not qualified to do
you really
that. So.
should make up. Seriously, I'm asking you to do this. When I graduate, I get my diploma, but then either during or after, you can hand me just a piece of paper that says, with a Sharpie written on it, honorary doctorate degree given by your signature.
I'll do it.
Because I'll hang it up in my offices.
I'll do it. I'm gonna start working on a good template in my mind for Sharpieing that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that'd be good. All right.
And
so,
then do a special presentation for me as I'm.
I will,
coming off
yeah.
the stage.
yeah, I'll probably dance. I'll probably get Derek to help me perform. We're going on a ship.
We're going on a ship.
We're going on a trip.
Oh,
We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket. Yeah.
Ship.
So we're going to sing that when Matt walks. I think Jeremy Roeder, he's walk. I don't know if he'd be coming. I hope he does. I want to meet him personally. So yeah, okay. Are there any questions about the syllabus? I mean, everything's pretty much there. Yeah. Spring break's thrown in there at some point. You note there that sometimes it'll say no quiz. Basically, I'm just going to throw in sometimes, but I just don't want to quiz you guys. And as these who have taken it before, sometimes your quiz may be, hey, do you love Jesus? Yes or no? I throw in some of those because
And those are typically the ones that I fail.
because he doesn't love Jesus or the Bible.
He's like, it's a trick. Wait.
Okay, so
It's a trick question.
so no
It's a
lie.
Boinger has trained me to understand. I can't.
So this is no lie. There was one of the students last semester who is one of the ones who did it as an elective class. I won't name this person. They actually did get one of those questions wrong.
Yeah.
It was one of those I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was her. But it's the question was true or false. I love Jesus more than anyone else. It was something like that. And he answered false, so I had to email him hey man, he's like, oh, I didn't mean to put that. He clicked the wrong thing, and he's like, no, I do love Jesus. I'm like, yeah, that's what I thought. Actually, I think I texted him. I think he's one of the guys who texted me. So, all right, if there's no questions on the syllabus, let me see if Charlie has any questions on the syllabus. Don't think so. Who is present in
No, I think I'm
class?
good.
All right, good. All right, cool. All right, so we've got what time does class end? 3:25. Good, we got 30 minutes. Whenever I want it to end. Awesome. I like the sound of that. So I want us to end fairly soon. All right, so let's pull up the article from Stetzer, and I'll pull it up on the screen for you guys on Blackboard. Collaborate. All right, Charlie, you see that okay?
We're going on a
Yeah.
trip.
All right, cool.
Rocket.
Okay. All right, so you guys should have read this before coming in today. So the class, I know you didn't because you don't ever do work before you come. So I come to know that.
He knows these things.
So Matt, you and I are going to have some really fruitful discussions based on the reading. And Matt will he'll pipe in on Blackboard 3 days from now. It's like, oh, that was a great chapter to read. And and he'll get like an 82 on his reading quiz, and he'll be okay. But
Because he's at this point like, I'm graduating.
Yeah. Look, yesterday I had a nasty case of senioritis.
that was your last semester was a nasty case of senioritis. So we'll talk about
Last
one day.
year and a half has been a nasty case of senioritis.
Okay, so let's talk about this idea of contextualization. What have you heard about it? What's your understanding of it so far? What?
Where is the article? It's not even in week 1.
He emailed it to us.
Click on announcements.
Yeah, and it's in your Google Apps mail.
So it's
That's
not
why I
my
found it.
fault.
Look at this guy.
It's your fault.
Yeah, I emailed it, but I didn't get it in the
There's
Blackboard.
no...
Good. Click
Oh,
on
there it is,
announcements.
there it is.
Yeah,
Christianity Today.
yeah. Click on announcements. This is one by
That's right, I
Stetzer.
saw that. I just forgot.
Yeah, of course. All right,
I'm
so
a busy man.
all right, so if you and I've got it pulled up here. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So right off the bat, you see in red there, contextualization involves an attempt to present the gospel in a culturally relevant way. That is probably your simplest definition that you're going to see of contextualization, and that really does encompass the whole idea. So, how have you come across that word in other classes or at church, or have you even? Is this a new concept for this class?
Well, since I went to Southeastern, I heard about it
You were
right off the bat.
Southeastern.
flooded with it.
Southeastern. I started there.
Oh, where?
And
Is it the
Southeastern
one-
Baptist.
The one I'm in now. The one I'm in.
They have an undergrad school. I started there, and then I transferred here because,
We're Superior School.
yeah, like, well, actually, it's closer to home. A little bit. Based on social work, my dad had some health problems. I'm the only child, so I came home, and then blah blah blah. But then I stayed here at Piedmont. When I last semester was my first semester here, and then I loved it. I was like, man, this school's great. And then Dustin actually kind of sought me out because Austin Decker, I think, told him, hey, this kid transferred from Southeastern. Man,
I hunted him down in the cafeteria one day. I'm like,
Basically-
someone show me Matthew Hutchins. Him.
Yeah, and I was like, oh gosh, because he saw like South. So, anyways, but no,
It was scary.
So
For
I
him.
learned about it from one of my professors at Southeastern, Dr. Liederbach,
Yeah.
in my intro class my freshman year. And then, so last semester I was always really interested in it. So I read that book that I wrote the paper on in Miss Smith's class. That's how me and you really got to know each other. Was
Everyday theology.
that everyday
Yeah.
theology and what is the mission of the church? by
Yeah,
Kevin
yeah,
DeYoung.
Young Gilbert. Yeah.
And then I've always been interested in church planting, North American especially. So yeah, so when I read this article, it really helped me understand more. Like the first definition, like what you just read, was always what I just thought contextualization is. You just figure out how to make it relevant. But then as I read this, I realized there's more to it than that. And the first thing is understanding culture, and like it made me really think that even in America, for instance, contextualization would be a little bit different here in the Southeast than versus where my dad's from in Seattle. You know what I mean?
Yep. And this is why this kind of class I think is essential for a program like this, because you guys are not always going to be in ministry in Winston-Salem, or even in North Carolina or wherever. You may be anywhere on this globe, and so understanding how to contextualize and what that means, you can go anywhere. You can go as a youth pastor to a small rural church like what I went to, and you have to contextualize. You can go to New York City and be a worship pastor with Hillsong, Matt. And you still have to contextualize. So everything we do as ministers of the gospel involves contextualization. Okay, what is the Great Commission? So I'm gonna start quoting it for me.
Therefore, make disciples
Of what?
of all nations.
Of all people of all nations. So stop there. So first you got to go is an action of doing. Make disciples. Well, your first question is, what's a disciple? What does that look like? We cover that in one of the other classes a little bit more. And then you say, of all nations. Well, when Jesus gave that command, he was talking to 12 Jewish guys, or 11, a crowd. But you know what I mean. He was talking to Jewish guys, and so how in the world are they going to make disciples of all nations when they're very limited in their understanding of their own ethnicity and their own culture? They only know that. But we see in the Book of Acts, as we studied last semester, the gospel does spread. It gets, it starts going towards Spain. Paul is left in Rome. In Acts 28, but he has the intent of going on to Spain, which was Gaul at that point. And so we know that. And then you look at church history, the gospel did spread over much of the earth and in different places, and then it comes here. So, you always have to contextualize. Matt, what about Matty? Sorry, what about you? Have you come across a word?
I'm reading the article as you speak, but most of what I've
seen as contextualization in terms of understanding the culture and how they relate to the gospel.
Yeah.
Because just in more in the church's failings than in their successes.
Mm.
Just because I'm more apt to see the negative and focus on the negative than anything. But what the church is doing is not applicable to what people are needing. People need the gospel. That's never going to change. But so many people think it's a bad thing to present the gospel, the same message just with a different inflection.
Yeah.
You're speaking the same words. It's just you're saying it differently than in previous times to better relate to what people. I mean, people nowadays are. I don't even know what people nowadays are thinking.
Right.
Some say that we're still stuck in postmodernism. The others say that no, that we've moved on to postmodernism.
Yeah.
It changes daily, but
And that could even vary. Not even city you live in, that can vary. If you go back to my hometown, they're stuck in modernism. There's very little postmodern. That's something that they're still trying to say. What's them Yankees talking about? That's my hometown. But then you go some places, they're like, well, we left postmodernism back in the '90s, And so that's why context determines all that. Charlie, you got anything you want to contribute to that conversation?
I just think that it's important to contextualize in a way that doesn't hurt the gospel or take away from it, and making sure that we're not changing it when we contextualize. I think that's the biggest issue, or the hardest thing to do is, you want to make it relevant for people, but you want it to be truth. So I think it makes it a lot easier if you do that, because then you have the gospel doing all the work, and it kind of takes away from what you have to do, because the gospel is good enough on its own.
Right.
So just like not overdoing it in the sense of making it so relevant that you change it or something.
Right, and that you bring up a good point. That is what scares people from the concept of contextualization. Oh no, we're gonna lessen the gospel, because many, in the name of contextualization, have done what we would call syncretism, which one of the papers that I wrote, you'll kind of get that. So we're not going to cover all that today, so to speak, because we'll kind of break in those concepts. But you can over-contextualize, or you can under-contextualize. You can over-contextualize to where, we know what, we're going to have to change the gospel's message to relate to Muslims. We're going to have to, deny the Trinity because they did. So if we want to get an audience with them, we got to make it sound like, Jesus and Allah are pals. So let's take away the Trinity. Well, that's not faithful contextualization. So they over contextualize, or some will under contextualize. Okay, so here's an example of under contextualization, where you have a church that's in the middle of a robust downtown urban area, and the pastor and church insist that they must always use the King James Version of the Bible. That is an under contextualization, because most likely not everyone's really going to quantify, and that's a kind of a weak example, but it is an example that they haven't, use the King James, that's fine, but when you say we have to, it's the only way, you're actually not understanding your context. The King James Bible was a product of contextualization. They had to get the Latin, which was taken from the Greek, they had to get that. All that was an act of contextualization. So the King James 1611 was an act of contextualization. That Bible fit that time very, very well. Nowadays, ESV is a little more popular. Why? It's a little more culturally relevant. So it doesn't mean that this is better than the King James. King James was better for its time. The ESV, if we went back in time and took this Bible back to 1612, do you think anyone would understand it? No, it's a different English. It's a different language. And so, anyways, that's the idea of contextualization. We're going to talk about syncretism, which is blending of beliefs. Syncretism would be something like, you go to India and you're dealing with a Hindu group, and you say, well, in order, they have 300 plus million gods, and so syncretism there is, let's make Jesus one of their gods they worship. Let's at least get them to that point. You're blending pagan with Christian beliefs in doing that. So as we get to, we'll talk about what that even looks like in North America. How have we syncretized the gospel in a lot of ways? And we have. in many, many ways. But yeah, the definition is true because so contextualization involves an attempt to present the gospel, and underlying here is staying faithful to the gospel, which most of these other definitions, really hit that well. Faithful to the gospel, but relevant to the culture. That's the whole point of contextualization, and so that's why we're studying culture. That's why we're studying scripture. That's why you're studying people. If you look in the course outline, we're actually going to talk about exegeting people, and this actually helps a lot with counseling. I know you have an interest in counseling, Maddie. How do you exegete a person and understand? That's what a counselor does. They're sitting with a person. So tell me about your home life. Tell me about your dad. Tell me about how you grew up in school. What is that counselor doing? He's trying to draw out their emotions, their exegesis to draw out of. And so we actually have to do that as, I would say, as ministers of the gospel. We have to understand people. So as the article goes through, we have to define culture because we want it in a culturally relevant way. So we have to understand culture, which there are many, many definitions. But he talks about Harvey Kahn's, which I have a few of Harvey Kahn's books. He says, we use the term culture to refer to the common ideas, feelings, and values that guide community and personal behavior, that organize and regulate what the group thinks, feels, and does about God, the world, and humanity. And so when we talk about culture, we throw that word around all the time. It's slapped onto a book, and then the book's not even written about culture. But culture, you have to think of culture very holistically. So you can't just go into a culture and say, I learned Spanish, therefore I understand Hispanic culture. No, you know their language, which is the first step of contextualization, usually is, in an international setting, cross-cultural, is language learning. You kind of bridge that gap. Is one of the first big ones to go through, which is a process of contextualization. But there's more. Why are quinceañeras so big? Why is that a big deal? My sister did not get a quinceañera when she was 15. Well, her Hispanic, at that point, she dated a Hispanic guy during high school named Rogelio, and his sister did have a quinceañera around the time that my sister was turning 15. So why does she have this thing? Well, it fits their culture. It's a cultural thing. Scroll down a little bit more on the article. He kind of defends or defines contextualization, which we're going to look as we go. We'll kind of touch on some different definitions of culture. I'm going to read one of my favorite ones. That's why I brought my list of books. My box of books. I knew it was at the bottom of this box. So. This is a new one. I'm very interested in reading.
What's it called?
Apostolic Church Planting. That might be a future textbook we use.
Oh,
It just came out. Tim Keller, Center Church, right? So let me find his definition of contextualization.
That's what they made us read in the seminar my freshman year.
Oh, nice.
This, I guess, what is it, like freshman orientation class?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they made us read.
It's a beefy book for a seminar.
Well, it depends on the program you're. I think the program I was in, that's why the leader bought me to read it.
Gotcha. All right, let's listen to Dr. Keller's definition of contextualization in his book, Center Church. Because he talks about sound contextualization, being faithful. Contextualization is not, as is often argued, giving people what they want to hear. So that's, some will say, well, you're changing up how you're planning a church, or you're changing up your preaching just to, give people what they want to hear, and with the assumption that you're trumping the gospel, leaving it out. Rather, it is giving people the Bible's answers, which they may not at all want to hear, to questions about life that people in their particular time and place are asking, that context, in language and forms they can comprehend, which is contextualization, and through appeals and arguments with force they can feel, even if they reject them. So sound contextualization means translating and adapting the communication and ministry of the gospel to a particular culture without compromising the essence and particulars of the gospel itself. And so I'm actually putting together a document just for fun of different definitions of contextualization. I'll be posting that soon for everybody, so you'll have that. But so your discussion board this week is actually going to be you're going to write your own understanding definition of contextualization. And so that's why reading this, would be helpful in reading that article. And you're going to interact on different nuances. So you're going to write it without looking at someone else's. You're not going to copy and paste what John Mark Terry wrote in his missiology book or something like that. So, anyways, when we talk about contextualization, there are different models or approaches to use, and this book is extremely boring to read, and you'll probably never have to touch this book unless you do missiology on a grad level. This was a pain to read. It's called Models of Contextual Theology, and he goes from everyone like the Catholic approach to the straight scientific anthropological, which is basically just leaves out the gospel. He just kind of looks at the different models of doing contextualization. And what we're going to look at, we're actually going to work through a model called the missional helix, developed by missiologist Galen Van Reenen in this book, Missions. And I've got like the chapter in PDF is going to be posted, and you're going to read that next week as well. I think that's next week. Anyways, so I'm actually using his helix in my dissertation. So I've done some reading and a lot of research on it and a few presentations. But the helix, as we'll see, is a model or kind of a structure to help do contextualization faithfully. So, and next Tuesday, we're going to spend the whole class period just kind of digesting that, going through it. I've got some slides I'll be showing to kind of help you see and get the concepts. And we're going to have fun with it. So no lie, Tuesday, 2 days ago, I presented with a bunch of other PhD peers an exegesis of the Dark Knight trilogy. All right, so I looked at the Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, in light of the upcoming Batman vs Superman. I thought it would be fitting. And there's a cultural issue going on where we are noticing a rise in superhero movies. I mean, we see that. It's like every other month there's a new superhero movie, and they're bringing up superheroes I didn't know were superheroes. Unless you're like a comic book guy, you would have no clue who all these some of these guys are. And so there's this huge rise in popularity. Well, why? That's a question as a missiologist, as a church planter, as a minister. Why this rise in superheroes all of a sudden? When I was a kid, I watched Batman cartoons. But there weren't big blockbuster movies. The Avengers, which was one of the best selling movies. So why this rise in the last probably 10 years? We've seen an increase with Spider-Man. I know the previous one. I can't remember the guy's name. Oh, shrimpy looking guy. Anyways, Tobey Maguire. Yeah, with him, that was like my middle school, high school era, and so that kind of got it started though. Because after that, the Hulk. There was a Hulk that came out. Thankfully, they redid that one.
Still wasn't very great.
Yeah, but it was better. We progressed a hair.
Yeah.
And then they changed them up again for the Avengers, which doesn't make any sense. But anyways, they'll get their act together. And then I come to my high school year, getting ready to come to college. The Dark Knight trilogy comes out. Batman Begins comes out 2002 or 3. I think it was my junior year of college. My floor went into RA. We went to IMAX in Charlotte and watched The Dark Knight when it came out with the Joker.
I wasn't allowed to see that one for the longest time.
Yeah, so we saw that, and then 3-4 years ago, The Dark Knight Rises came out with Bane and all that. So, well, you can think that. I thought it was good but so here's the thing though.
I don't read the comics, so I thought it was good.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have a bunch of friends who still go to the comic book store weekly.
So when thinking of contextualization, it's important that we exegete culture and ask the question, well, why this big rise in superheroes? I did a little further, and I'll show you guys probably next week how I went through that, so I won't do it now. But what is happening in society that is prompting people to crave a hero? Think about it. Every superhero movie, here's the people, and here's this unconquerable force. The people are in danger. They need a hero. The unconquerable force cannot be beaten by mere humans. The military can't take him down. It needs a Thor to step in, or it needs an Iron Man to step in, or it needs you fill in the blank with a superhero. Gotham can't understand this Joker guy. He is baffling police. They need Batman. All right. Bane comes in with a nuke and can't get off of Gotham's island. All right, Manhattan Island, basically. You can't get off of Gotham because there's a nuke driving around, and the police are now stuck underground. The typical heroes are done. We need Batman. So what is happening in culture that prompts what culture is producing? Okay, so like the movies, why is it? Well, think about it. We're facing terrorism. Now you'll notice there's a correlation in the rise of superhero movies post 9/11 because there's a force that we don't understand and we can't conquer.
Use the force.
Well, Islamic terrorism. We can't just go and wipe it out. We can't just throw them all in jail and it's all done. So this unconquerable force. You also have a lessening of what it means to be a hero. In my grandpa's generation, a hero was a paratrooper who went and fought against Nazi Germany. That guy was a hero. We talk about war heroes. We don't talk about war heroes very much anymore. Guys like Teddy Roosevelt, George Washington. In history, they were heroes, but they were men who were just moral, did upright, and did the right thing when it needed to be done. We have not seen that in over 50 years. Since the 60s, the rise of postmodernism, truth gets blurred. Is it absolute truth to have good male role model? It doesn't matter. You can, decide your own family structure with or without a husband. So all these things lead in. So now you've got all these men who have to put on costumes in order to be a hero, and they have to have superpowers. Now that's also why I like Batman more than I like Superman. Because he's not an alien. He didn't have, so that's why I like him a little more. But even in the end, can Batman still save everyone from death? No. Rachel dies. Harvey Dent dies. So that's a spoiler if you haven't seen those movies. Sorry. So anyways, so that is in essence a huge part of contextualization is paying attention to what's happening in broad culture, but also diving into small localized cultures. All right. So like what you guys are doing out at Watown. Could you take a lot of the ministry stuff that you're doing at Watown and take it over into Clemens and have the same effectiveness? No, different context. So even in Winston-Salem, you can cross the street and you've got to ask different questions now. Okay, so that's why this is important. Contextualization is because you've got to learn how to study Watown and understand it so well that you know what does the gospel need to look like and stay faithful. In communication, in demonstration, and in application. You've got to understand what it looks like for a group of 34 teens at High Point.
Who all go to either. It's interesting too. Only one goes to a public school, 4 are homeschooled, but 2 of them go to the Forsyth Tech Early College. But all the rest of them either go to Wesleyan or HBCA.
Okay.
Which is, I'm already noticing some differences between those sets of students.
HBCA is a massive school. We're there for our college fair. I didn't know that.
Wesleyan's bigger too. That's where I went.
Yeah.
But no, they're both. Sorry, but yeah.
No, you're fine.
But yeah, you're right. And like I've noticed that just some of these kids, it's harder to tell with them. They're almost dangerous. Like for instance, like I told you, like growing up Presbyterian and stuff. Like, when we were 10 years old, our learners class was going through the Westminster Confession, and it's like a lot of these kids. It's like they know the right things to say, but it's like, do they really believe it? That's something I struggled with for a long time. Was I knew all this stuff, and I'm noticing that with them versus those other 6 or 7 kids who are either the homeschool or the public school. It's like totally different. Like they're almost wanting, so, and that's what I'm struggling with is how can I teach them a level that keeps them dialed in? Because I've noticed some of those students, they're getting Bible all the time in their mandatory Bible classes to where they probably see it youth group as, they're just going to tune out because they're just getting another.
It's like another Sunday school, another Bible class.
So
exactly.
Trying to figure out what context, and so far the small groups have been working better than me getting up there and talking for 25, 30 minutes. Like the small group discussion has been working better.
And that's interesting you bring that up because in our youth ministry, I was starting to understand contextualization in an academic sense, but then I started like, wait a second, I haven't even studied my own youth group yet. And so I started realizing we had a lot who were who knew the general answers to give, but weren't living it out. And so we actually started structuring our youth ministry to have them out doing more and practicing what they already knew, and not a lot of flooding with teaching. So we actually cut teaching in half. the amount of time we took off 2 times that we were supposed to be teaching each week that the previous guy had done. They were doing like Sunday night deep Bible study, Wednesday night light Bible study. I'm like, well, how about we just pick one time to study the Bible well, and so we did small groups with that, and then we would take Sunday afternoon and go do a lot of actual ministry stuff and let them divide. Based on what you know about the Bible, what kind of ministry should we start? And then step back and let them figure it out. So that's the active. So you're gonna have to do that with understanding what's the best way to disciple the teens God has brought to our church, so that they can go and make disciples. So you got to contextualize your ministry practice so that you see, contextualization is a big deal, and it's not something we should be afraid of. It is not going, if done right and done well and done faithfully, and as Paul Hebert, who's a missiologist, will talk a lot about. And he talks about in here in different models. Paul Hebert advocated using critical contextualization, and critical not as in I'm being critical and negative to you, but critical as in we're thinking through all the elements of it. We're critiquing it. We're looking at our contextualization from all angles, saying, is it faithful? And so, anyway, that's probably that's the main part I wanted to bring about from this article. But anyway, so kind of get the gist of contextualization in a bit. And so in this class, what we're going to do is we're going to understand what does it mean to exegete Scripture and understand it, so that we're staying faithful to the gospel. We're going to learn how to exegete culture and what it produces, so cultural texts. So we're going to have some, like your discussion board things. You'll be doing something like, what's a popular TV show or song right now? Pick a song from the top 100 or the top 10 this week and exegete the lyrics. Just because you're going through and understanding what they're saying and where they're coming from, and because music is a reflection of broader culture in a lot of ways. Like movies, same thing.
What's his name? Macklemore.
Yep. So you have what? One Love, Same Love. What's it called?
All of his are social issues.
Very much. Very much.
From a Northwest, Pacific, like some people in my family, like their mindset, which is very almost pluralistic more than postmodern, I'd say. Like just having a family who lives in Seattle, visit them. Most of them are believers, thankfully, but it's definitely very pluralistic there. To where, you're a Christian. It's not so much hostile. It's more of like, well, that's what you believe. This is what I believe.
Right. And they're open to it. Like, okay, yeah, you do you, I do me.
Calgary.
Very much. It's even that times more than we see, because Calgary has, America has a more Protestant tradition in most regions. Northeast has more Catholic, but most other areas in North America, especially we have a Protestant background. Canada has a completely Catholic background, and so their Catholicism died a century ago. So they don't even have grandparents who went to mass anymore. And that of course was a bad theology to start with. So yeah, they're London, same.
And that's
UK.
what makes like Northwest so unique is like there was never really a strong church presence out there that much, at least not in modern times so much.
Right.
So it's like
It's been a while. And the ones that did, they were the frontier kind of churches and things. So.
What about Calgary? Are you still?
Yeah, Jill and I are going in 2 weeks. We're going back up with Kirk to visit and keep making that decision. So, yeah, we won't. It'll be May before we actually will say a definitive yes or no. So we've got time. We're going on another trip, not in a rocket ship, not a plane. So we'll go again. Yeah, close enough. And then we are going to take the months of February and March to get to know the missions team at Calvary and get to know them. So we've had a few little meetings. They want to get to know us more. I do the North American Mission Board's assessment process in April, which we go to Calvary for 3 days and do that. And then there's some paperwork I'll do beforehand. And then after that, if the assessment comes back okay, the church wants to proceed with me, and Jill and I feel called to Calgary, then we'll kind of go from there. So yeah, be prepared for that. We'll know more in May. So when you guys are finishing up this class and taking your final exams and you're walking across the stage, I hopefully should know what I'm doing with my life at that point. So yes, it's a matter of prayer. But contextualization is a big thing up there because it's not Winston-Salem at all. I met with one of the leaders from we'll finish up on this because we're kind of done today. But I was meeting with the guy who leads the initiative at Calvary, and there's another planter up there who is going to be on the same side of town that we may potentially be on. So he'd be kind of a partnering sister church. And he and his wife moved up there. They haven't planted yet. They're kind of doing an internship with another church for a while. But they moved up there into the neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods, this past June or July, I think. And they've been, building relationships with, their neighbors and, building that kind of stuff and talking about that. And they've been there for 6 months. And they, in their neighborhood, which their neighborhood has a couple thousand people, neighborhoods are huge there, they have yet to find a Christian who can actually, like even in conversations, like, we have not found a Christian yet, like a born again believer, and they've been there for 6 months, and in their neighborhood they haven't found it yet. And so here we can go to you pick a store or restaurant right now. We'll go there, and within 3 minutes we can find a Christian. We probably don't have to ask them a question. You'll hear what they say or something like that. You can find a Christian. It's different there. So contextualization is a whole nother beast in an area like that. And then if you go anywhere else overseas, it's you have language barriers and different things and cultural customs and all that. So I hope to bring in, there's some kind of fun stories of contextualization gone wrong. I know that sounds bad, but there's some where they tried this and the village chief was like, you need to leave now. We're kicking you out because you brought in the wrong color chicken. I thought we were just bringing a meal. No, we don't do it that way because Grandma, Aunt so-and-so chiefed us. All kind of stuff you have to understand. So luckily, we don't have that much to worry about in North America with different chickens. But you're going to be dealing with, the nuns who are religiously unaffiliated. That's on the rise. And then you have what we call the duns who are kind of unchurched. They're done with church. So nuns and duns, if I throw that out, that's what that means. Yeah. It's a quick way of saying it. You either left a church or you have no desire to ever be part of it. You're none or you're done. So that is the point of this class. We're going to break this down and hopefully equip you guys to, be able to exegete your neighborhood that God puts you in. So, in whatever ministry, you don't have to go into church planting specifically in order to learn how to contextualize. Charlie, you there online? You got to practice contextualization when you're selecting worship songs. It may not be the best to do Gregorian chants, though you could do that, Charlie. You could do a nice Gregorian chant. Anyways, all right, guys, time is out. We're going to wrap up. Charlie, we will see you next Tuesday, my friend.